Good morning, Year 10. I hope you're well and having a lovely day. For your Do Now, answer this question. How would you describe Inspector Gall? Use quotes to support your answer. Pause the video to do this now. So now could you write the date and title? The title is Who is the Inspector? Key Moment 5. This is your Do Now review, so you may have written any of these things. If you didn't get everything on the slide, please could you write it down? So he's forceful. I'm not going until I know all that happened. Sharply. Come along, Mr. Croft. What happened? He's influential. You seem to have made a great impression on this child. He's moral. Public men, Mr. Burling, have responsibilities as well as privileges. He's cunning. No hushing up, eh? Public confession of responsibility, He's blunt. She wasn't pretty when I saw her today. He's empathetic. I've thought that it would do us all a bit of good if sometimes we tried to put ourselves in the place of these young women. He's not intimidated by class. Don't stammer and yammer at me again, man. And you've also got Priestley's voice. We don't live alone. We are members of one body. We are responsible for each other. So he epitomizes Priestley's position on social responsibility. So make sure you have made a note of what's on the slide. Okay, so now we're going to be rereading pages 55 to 61 of your play. So please could you pause the video to do that? Focus on Inspector Gall and the generational divide. Okay, so please could you now read through the key moment. The key moment is attached on class charts, and I would like you to read through it, please. When you make notes, you can make your notes on the extract, which you could have printed from class charts, or you can do your notes in your play. So as you read through the key moment, I would like you to make notes on the presentation of the characters, focusing on language and structure, but most importantly, the potential effect on the audience, both contemporary from the time and modern. Ask yourself what themes are apparent. What questions could you answer using this moment? So pause the video to do that now. Okay, so we're now going to go through together. So starting with Inspector taking charge masterfully. So the adverb masterfully, it shows he's assertive, he's a clear leader of the situation, despite the Burling's superior class. And then you've got stop, an exclamatory sentence and an imperative verb, again showing he's very much in control of the situation. They are suddenly quiet, staring at him. Again shows that even though they are wealthy and high class, and he's not, he's the one in control of the situation. And be quiet for a moment and listen to me. So we have more imperative verbs with be quiet and listen. I don't need to know any more. Neither do you. This girl killed herself and died a horrible death. But each of you helped to kill her. Remember that. Never forget it. So we have short sentences to emphasize his message. He looks from one to the other of them carefully. So this is giving them time to reflect on what he has said, so he can make an impact, which shows he is, once again, the master of the situation. He knows how to utilize this opportunity to help them grow and learn from their mistakes. But then I don't think you ever will. Remember what you did, Mrs. Burling. You turned her away when she most needed help. You refused her even the pitiable little bit of organised charity that you had in your power to grant her. Remember what you did. So I would highlight the word remember, repeated 3 times in that section, to emphasise that he's trying to get them to learn a lesson. And pitiable little bit, you've got a triad of qualifiers, words that make something smaller, to show her callowness, her cruelty. She wouldn't even give her small, tiny bit of charity, even though it was well within her means to do so. Eric unhappily, my God. So the fact that he's speaking unhappily shows that, like Sheila, he's been greatly affected and feels responsible. So we have that generational divide between Mr. and Mrs. Burling, who don't feel very responsible. And then we have Sheila and Eric, who feel much more responsible. And they represent the youth of that society, and how even if the older members remained set in their ways and took a more conservative approach, Priestley hoped that the younger generation, like Sheila and Eric, would take action and would feel responsible for other members of their society. My God, I'm not likely to forget. So the blasphemy indicates horror at what he's done. Inspector just used her for the end of a stupid, drunken evening, as if she was an animal, a thing, not a person. So used her indicates that Eric objectified Eva, made her into an object, and that's further consolidated by the triad of nouns we have at the end of that sentence. Animal, thing, not a person. This also emphasizes how vulnerable Eva was, that she could be objectified in this manner due to her class. He looks at Sheila. Sheila bitterly, I know. I had her turned out of a job. I started it. So she takes more than her fair share of responsibility here. She's the only one who doesn't need the inspector to explain her wrongdoing. And this shows, even though she was presented like a child at the start of the play, she's grown up so much, and she's gone from potentially being the most immature and naive to the most mature and sophisticated and empathetic. Inspector, you helped, but didn't start it. Rather savagely to Burling, you started it. She wanted 25 shillings a week instead of 22 and 6 pence. You made her pay a heavy price for that, and now she'll make you pay a heavier price still. So repetition of you shows that Mr. Burling is responsible, and you've got repetition of you and pay and price, which indicates that for Mr. Burling, it's all about money. He cared so much about the financial price that he would pay if he gave her the wage increase, that he paid a moral price for his callowness and his selfish approach. Then Burling unhappily, look, Inspector, I'd give thousands, yes, thousands. So this is very capitalist thinking. He thinks he can throw money at a problem and it'll go away. You're offering the money at the wrong time, Mr. Burling. He makes a move as if concluding the session, possibly shutting up the notebook, etc., then surveys them sardonically. So the word sardonically, the adverb, shows mocking and derisive attitude. It's a bit condescending, sarcastic. No, I don't think any of you will forget, nor that young man Croft, though at least he had some affection for her, and made her happy for a time. Well, Eva Smith's gone. You can't do her any more harm, and you can't do her any good now. You can't even say I'm sorry, Eva Smith. So the repetition of you can't emphasizes the futility of regret after selfish behaviour, and in that sense it's really effective in motivating us to take action right now to prevent wrongdoing and to stop us being selfish. Because if you're too late, there's nothing you can do. Sheila, who is crying quietly, that's the worst of it. Inspector, but just remember this. One Eva Smith is gone, but there are millions and millions and millions of Eva Smiths and John Smiths left with us, with their lives, their hopes and fears, their suffering and chance of happiness, all intertwined with our lives, and what we think and say and do. We don't live alone. We are members of one body. We are responsible for each other. And I tell you that the time will soon come when, if men will not learn that lesson, they will be taught it in fire and blood and anguish. Good night. So there's quite a lot to pick out there. So firstly, Eva Smith. It's thought that Eva is a link to Eve, as in Adam and Eve from the Bible, and that choice was made because she's meant to represent all women. So she's almost a metaphor of sorts to represent all women out there. And Smith is just the most common surname. Millions and millions and millions. You've got tricolon and repetition to emphasize just how many people need help and just how many people are vulnerable. And then you've got intertwined. That's a really important verb. Connotations of being inexplicably linked. Everyone's lives are linked together. It kind of links to this idea of the butterfly effect. You do one small thing to one person or for one person, and the ramifications are potentially endless. We think and say and do. The tricolon emphasizes that every little bit of our action, every little bit of our behavior affects other people. We do not live, this is an absolutely key quote, we don't live alone. We are members of one body. We are responsible for each other. So that's the key message of the play. Everyone is equally important in society, and everything we do affects other people. And at the very end, we have biblical imagery of hell, where sinners go to confront their sins. Fire and blood and anguish. He walks straight out, leaving them staring, subdued and wondering. Sheila is still quietly crying. Mrs. Burling's collapsed into a chair. Eric is brooding desperately. Burling, the only active one, hears the front door slam, moves hesitantly towards the door, stops, looks gloomily at the other three, then pours himself a drink, which he hastily swallows. So hastily swallows shows he's disconcerted and fearful. And so they've all been affected by the inspector in some way, though as we can see from the later conversation, some more than others. Okay, so can you make sure you have those notes written down in your play, please? You may want to re-listen to that section, but make sure you have them all written down before you move on. So the last thing I'd like you to do, using your notes from today's lesson, answer the following question. Who is Inspector Gall? You can use the Peel structure if you like. Remember to include language and structural analysis and consider the reader. You may also want to consider context. So pause the video please and do that now. Okay, so that is the end of today's lesson. Thank you very much for your hard work, and I will speak to you tomorrow for our final key moment, which will be key moment 6. So have a lovely rest of your day and speak to you tomorrow.